Tengo hasta público acá. Oye, chicas, ¿pueden poner Cuéntame un libro? Para que también
¿Prevenido?
vean el programa.
¿Prevenido?
Cuéntame. Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenas noches. Estamos en punto de las 7:32 de la noche en Campeche, México. Y desde Toronto nos saluda Claudia Castori, porque hoy, Clau, vamos a tener un programa muy especial. Es la inauguración oficial de Tell Me a Book. Vamos a platicar hoy sobre este idioma, el idioma de Shakespeare, el idioma de Faulkner, el idioma de Hemingway, de tantos grandes en la literatura, y que muchas veces hemos platicado sobre ese tema, acerca de cómo ha sido esta interacción, las traducciones, etcétera. Pero qué mejor, Clau, ¿cómo estás tú?
Muy bien, Gonzalo. Estoy muy emocionada y a la vez muy nerviosa porque, como dices, estamos dando un paso hacia adelante a este nuevo proyecto denominado Tell Me a Book, donde queremos pues llevarles a todos estos invitados de habla inglesa y que es muy necesario que todos los peregrinos conozcan, Gonzalo. Así que pues aquí estamos en este nuevo paso y con este nuevo bebé denominado Tell Me a Book.
Entonces, bueno, vamos a hacer el switch. So, today we're going to talk with, this is a person I put on my Facebook post that many people, Claudia, talks about to change the world, but few of them are working and are doing something to change it. And I think our first guest, our first interview today, it's this kind of person. It's an author, it's a teacher, but especially all of them, it's one of my friends. And with you, we have Mr. Mark Sagarin. Mark, good night. Thanks for joining us today.
Well,
It's a
thank
pleasure
you.
to have you here. And I was talking with you that you are this kind of people that I think people should know, because all the work that you are doing are all around the world, and not just with the fact that you teach English, also the fact that you well, I'm not going to tell my own experience with you, because it's gonna be like
But
pretentious. But
so, Gonzalo,
yeah,
I have
yeah,
the first question, but
Sure.
okay, go ahead.
Go
for
ahead.
this reason,
Hmm.
tell us uh, how you met to Mark Sagarin, because it's necessary
Yeah.
that this story how you met.
Yeah,
Very good
it's a
question,
nice
by the way.
story.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
Claudia.
you.
Well, this happened because, I went to United States.
Hmm.
I went to Washington, and then I come by nearby to Maryland, on the northwest Maryland, I guess.
Hmm.
So I go to well, Claudia, Mark, I love books. Then one day
Hmm.
I was visiting Gatesburg. Then I found the library, and then I remember that I read like the schedule, and it says
Hmm.
English practices. And then I found that it was an English International English Club, and then the teacher was Mark Sagarin. So I went to the library. I walked to the stairs, and then I present myself. I found you, Mark, and this a lot of people all over the world, people from Pakistan, people from Iran, people from all over the United States, all
Hmm.
over Latin America. So that's the way I just met Mark back in the States, back 2017, I guess, Mark, or it was
2007.
2018.
I think it's 2017, Gonzalo. Exactly. Exactly.
It was
Yeah.
2017, and then, Claudia, that's the way I met Mark, and then we start to talk. I met all the people, because it was not just for practicing English. It was also an experience, because we talk a lot of cultures. We
Hmm.
That's the first time I met someone from Pakistan. I never knew anyone from there, so that was a nice experience, and not just this part of the world. But Mark, how are you? And please introduce with everyone, because it's not about me today's show. It's about you and what you're doing in Washington, in the United States. Please
Oh,
tell
thanks
us
so
about
much
you.
for your kind words, Gonzalo. It would be impossible for me to live up to your introduction. You're such a good friend. But yes, what you said is the experience of many people that we have met. I've been doing this in the library system and in other sort of through other organizations in government buildings in a place called Montgomery County, which is a northwest suburb, a county in the state of Maryland in the US, which has about 1 million people. And it actually has one of the most diverse populations in the United States. I think it turns out to be maybe the second most diverse population in the US. So as you said, we meet people in our groups from countries like Cameroon, like Iran, like Taiwan, China, Pakistan, all over. It's just amazing, all throughout Latin America, Africa, Asia, Europe. And many people have the same story as you do. They came to the library for one reason or another to check out a book or to get some information, and maybe they saw a sign that said English Conversation Club, right? We refer to ourselves as a club and meetings rather than classes because sometimes classes sound a little too formal and scare people away who are nervous about their English language skills. So we try to make it as friendly, as conversational as possible. And as you so accurately said, Gonzalo, it's not just about practicing our listening skills and our speaking skills in English. It's about learning about different people from so many countries, from so many cultures all around the world. Yeah.
Mark, and also I want to say hi to Mrs. Susan because it's Mark's
Sure.
wife. She was another amazing person
Hmm.
that I met back in the United States. I just have the notebook that uh, I mean, she gave me back when I was
Hmm.
in Washington, and she told me that I
Hmm.
can write down all my memories, what I happened there. So I have that one. So
Hmm.
Susan, hi, if you're watching this, I hope you're watching this. This is also
Absolutely.
a hi for you, and thank you for all what you did for me. And I also remember, well, they did, Claudia, they did a lot of for me. So, but again,
Hmm.
this is not about me. Mark, I have this first question because most
Sure.
of the time, and also the people are watching us to speak or to see about this international language, which is English. So,
Hmm.
do you think that we can consider as the English as the language of the world? That's actually the title of our
Hmm.
post, or the Facebook post that I put there,
I
because
saw
it
that.
was like I
Hmm.
want to like use this kind of words so everyone can watch and maybe they can agree or disagree with the
Hmm.
title. But that's the first question, Marty. Do you think that we can consider English as the language of the world? I mean, the fact that you and me were talking in this language at this time, in this moment, maybe it's a proof of
Hmm.
that. But I want to hear
Hmm.
your opinion on that.
It's a great question, Gonzalo, and I think at least at this time, what is this? Early 2022, right? I think for
Yeah.
many people, it does seem to be the international language. Of course, there are more people that probably speak Mandarin Chinese, and certainly a lot of obviously Spanish speakers and French speakers and Arabic speakers. But it seems for a wide variety of reasons, English is the language. Maybe because of business would be one of the reasons, and entertainment, all the Hollywood movies that we export around the world, that people seemed, at least for a while now, that English is a language that a lot of people gravitate towards, even when it's not their own first language. When they're studying a second language, many people throughout the world choose English as the language they want to learn. Right, particularly young people, right? People much younger than myself, really want to learn English, right? They're very excited about it. I'm constantly meeting people, and of course, since COVID, nearly 2 years now, our meetings have not been in person. Like you and I, met in the library. We're not doing that currently during the pandemic. We're meeting on Zoom. So now we have people logging in, from all parts of the world at various times of the day and night to join us. And many of them are young people that are very, very enthusiastic, very passionate, I would say, about improving their English language skills. And they just love talking and listening to English. Mhm.
Got it. Mark, I remember this phrase. It is from, I think, Helen Keller, that says something like, the highest result of education is tolerance. So, um, this is this is exactly what we do when we met more other people, because I think it was uh, maybe two people. The last people we interview is this
Mhm.
Peruvian writer, and she wrote something about the war in Afghanistan. But she
Mhm.
told us that most of the times there are many things in common with people. I mean, we have more things in common with people that we don't think that we have those kind of things. We don't think we have a lot of things in common. So
Mhm.
that's one of the biggest lessons like I learned about this. So Mark,
Mhm.
what's the biggest obstacle when you teach English to foreign people? Like, it is the accent, it is the way of thinking, it is what is this big obstacle? Because most of the times many people, and I actually I listen myself, that many people say something like, I do understand English but I cannot speak English. So that's
Absolutely.
what is this, what do you think about this?
Sure. I'm just going to slightly change one word you said. I mean, your English is perfect, is phenomenal, Gonzalo. But the one thing I do not like to use the word obstacle, right? Because when we hear the word obstacle, it might start bringing in some negative thoughts and nervousness and things like that. When we particularly when we're trying something new, like a language, right? So rather than obstacle, let's think of it as a challenge, right? Like the challenges, and the challenges, we want to live up to the challenges, to be able to face them, to meet them, right? So rather, in a more positive space, rather than it's an obstacle, it's something I have to worry about. Because when people start to worry when it comes to language, their listening ability skills, their speaking skills start to go down because they're nervous, they're not comfortable, and we want them in a positive space, right? So I think the number one thing that I've heard, and I've been doing this, I think, for over 16 years now, the number one thing that I've heard from people all around the world, Gonzalo, is those that have studied English in their native countries. It doesn't make a difference if it's Mexico, China, if it's Cote d'Ivoire, if it's Poland, wherever they are, almost all of them, the focus when they studied English in their native countries was on reading and writing and grammar, which are all very, very important. But listening and speaking are coming from a different place, right? So we meet people that have studied English for 5 years or 10 years in their native country. They come to the United States. That's how originally we met them, because it was only in person before our Zoom meetings the last 2 years. They'd come to the United States. They thought they knew English pretty well. You studied 5 or 10 years. They get off the plane in the airport. They hear announcements, and immediately they do not understand anything that people are saying to them in English, because their focus had been so much on reading and writing. And that's through no fault of their own. That's how they were taught. So I think the biggest challenge is getting more exposure to hearing English and giving people an opportunity to practice speaking English. I think that's the number one thing that I would say
Now,
universally.
now you mentioned that, I remember the time I was in New York, and it was someone saying, hey Joe," and I was thinking it was a guy named Joe
Mm,
next to me, because they
exactly.
were saying, hey Joe," and I have no idea. And then well, this guy actually needs to touch me and tell me, "Hey, you!" I mean, "Hey, you!"
Hmm.
They were pointing me that I need to move
Hmm.
from the door, but I was listening, "Hey, Joe." So I was
Hmm.
thinking it was a guy from named Joe that they were talking actually. So, but Mark, Claudia, she has a good question for you. Claudia,
Sure.
please
No,
go ahead.
Yes, Claudia.
I do. Um, for me, Mark, when the people there is a big difference when the
Mhm.
people study English in country maternal country, no, or speak English or study English in a country where talk English uh,
Absolutely.
everything, no.
Yes.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
when the people once start study English in country maternal country, what is
Hmm.
the best advice how to start the people? Because when the people
Hmm.
study English, for example, no, I study English in my country, but it's very
Hmm.
different when I write to other, for example, to Toronto. No, it's very different.
Hmm.
Oh no,
Very different.
I don't study English. Never
Uh,
study English.
Yeah.
It's very
Again,
different.
I understand, Claudia. Absolutely. Again, the good news is, Claudia, you are not alone. 99% of the people I meet feel this exact same way as you. So you could take a deep breath and think, "Oh, don't worry, it's not just you. Everyone feels the same way because it's just so different to be in a country. I mean, if you're studying English in your native country, often your teachers are not native English speakers, right? They're native either Spanish speakers or Chinese or Farsi or French or Arabic. And if they're teaching you English, it's not going to be, for the most part, the same as someone who's a native English speaker teaching you English. So there's a lot of that going on. I think you asked the $1 million question. There's no one answer, but I think the best advice, the best
Mhm.
suggestion I could give to you, Claudia, and to
Suggest.
everyone who's listening and who we meet is try to surround yourself with as much English as possible. Watch Netflix in English,
But
and if you want to have the subtitles and
this,
everyone wants to have them in their native language, that's fine. But we need to hear it, and watch movies and TV. And again, you can use subtitles; that's okay. But just to hear people saying it, and try, however possible, if you can meet someone that you can practice English with, even if they're not a native speaker, just to practice. And I know this is not easy for a lot of people to find someone to speak English with. So one thing we say, and I say it in all seriousness, people think I'm kidding, but I'm not. Talk to yourself in English, but talk to yourself out loud, not in your
oh,
head, but say the words, pronounce them, so you get to hear, and practice. And then the other thing combined with all this, and of course there are so many things people take classes if they're able to, and grammar, of course, but do not be afraid to make mistakes. Do not worry. We all make mistakes. I make so many mistakes each day. I could lose count if I tried to start counting, right? So just talk, and don't worry. And if someone says something and we're not 100% sure of what they said, we could you please repeat that or something like that? And over time,
yes.
it's the repetition, right? Over and over and over. And just let yourself go, like the way children, like when we see children learning their native language, right? They just talk. They just say things. They're not worried about grammar. They're not worried about if they're making mistakes. They just talk. We have to have that inner child just to forget about making mistakes. Don't worry. Just do it, right? And we learn. We learn
Oh,
from mistakes. It's
Mark.
easier. Mhm.
Mark, did you remember the first time? Maybe it was the second or the third time that I talked with you. I was working in McDonald's, so
I
it was
do.
this
I remember
lady
the
on the
location. Hmm.
drive-through. Yeah, on the
Hmm.
drive-through, and she was saying, "I want this burger with something like Canadian bacon," and I was like,
Hmm.
"What? Canadian
Hmm.
bacon?" And then I was like, "I don't know what to do." I was with the computer. I have no idea what's a Canadian bacon. And this is the first time I heard
Hmm.
about that. So one of the guys
Sure.
on the drive-through, it was someone from I don't know, maybe from Brazil. And he just told me it's just bacon, just
Hmm.
go ahead. And I was, oh, it's just bacon. But it was not
Hmm.
bacon, it was just jam. It was just jam. So go ahead. And I was, oh, yeah, it was just jam. But I remember that, Mark, and I remember this because this next well, this what I want to ask your opinion about this is for I remember one of my teachers told me that learn a new language is like a cup of it's he used the example of the cup of tea. So if you have
Okay.
your cup a cup of tea and it's full, let's say it's water or tea or whatever, any
Hmm.
liquid or we want to talk about. And then if you try to refill with another liquid, maybe coffee, maybe green tea, whatever, then he told me what's going to happen. Then it will split all the liquid that you try to put on the cup of tea because it's full. And he
It's
told me
full.
that's exactly what happened when you try to learn a new language using your own, like your native language. Because if you're thinking in Spanish, I mean, I'm a Spanish speaker, I'm a native Spanish
Sure.
speaker. So most of the time, but right now I'm working on a call center, and well, it's not a call center; it's an insurance company, but that's another story.
Sure.
On Texas, so I heard a lot of time people talking in English like South accent, which is complete
Hmm.
different from the north of the United States,
Hmm.
because well, it's different. So, Mar, do you think it's this comparison is appropriate for the cup of tea that if you try to learn a new language, you need to split, you need to throw away all the liquid, all the way that you think on your native language, and then try to
Oh.
think
Hmm.
about it in a new language with the new language because it happens sometimes when I was in the US. I told you
Hmm.
I was to start to dreaming in English because
Yeah.
I talk in
Mm.
English in McDonald's. I talk English with you. So
Absolutely.
the actual only time that I was that I can speak Spanish is when I talk with my friends, with my family back in Mexico.
Hmm.
So uh, then my brain starts to think all the time in English. I dream in
Hmm.
English. I talk in English. So do you think this it's appropriate this comparison from the cup of tea?
Oh, it's a great example. I think there are a couple of ways to answer that. So I'll approach it from a number of different ways, Gonzalo. One, like if we look at, because I mostly teach, I teach adults, but occasionally, particularly now on Zoom, and even in the library, at times people would bring in particular would bring their children, like young children,
Yeah.
toddlers or early grade school kids because they had them with them and they wanted to practice English, but they needed to take care of their child too if they were not in school at the time. And one thing that I hear from parents consistently is, my son, my daughter, they learn English so quickly, right? They're 6 years old, they're 8 years old, they're 10 years old. They're learning so quickly. How come I've been studying for 10 years and I'm still, and they think their level is not where they'd like it to be. And one of the ways that I answer that is using the comparison that you mentioned. That think about it. I mean, for me, I'm 59 years old. So I've had all these years of English, hopefully some knowledge, but all this stuff, in my brain for 59 years in my native language mostly. Whereas children, say a 6-year old, an 8-year old, there's not all that much in it, right? There's so much more that they can absorb, particularly when it comes to a language. So ours is like our brains could in some sense, like you said, could be like a cup of tea that's filled up, where there's so much more room to pour knowledge, to pour language into them, and they absorb it quickly. So I think the ideal would be for most people to get rid of the native way of thinking, as you said. But in reality, I don't think that's how most people approach it. I think certainly in the beginning and maybe for quite a while, people are thinking in their native language and translating into English in their head. And it certainly can slow you down, but it's understandable. Most of us don't have such a super high level of language skills that we can instantly start thinking in that second language. For most people, it's not realistic. Very few. But what happens, as you said, Gonzalo, when you are surrounded by the English language at
Yeah.
work, coming to our meetings, all of a sudden you're starting to dream in English. Like, oh, you don't have to start, not every word you're thinking is in Spanish and then being translated. A lot of things you're just saying in English because it's become much more comfortable and all around you, right? I think
Yeah. For
that's
example,
I think that's how we do it.
Claudia, go ahead, please.
Sure.
Eh, we are going to read the message of the public
Great.
because it's right. The public
Hmm.
is Miriam G. Ramirez, Miriam G. Ramirez, say in Spanish, please too. Dice Gwendolyn Michelle, what a good times.
Gwendolyn.
Oh, Wendy, she comes
Gwendolyn
to our
Michelle.
English meetings, sure, and she was a student, I believe, of Gonzalo's in Campeche.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, perfecto.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Isis
Hi, Wendy.
Ángeles, Samal Odarot Airam, desde Ensenada, nos están escribiendo, de Ensenada. Miriam G. Ramírez, from Mexico. Carmen Rosa Zamora, from Chile. And Gwendolyn Michelle dice, can be challenging to learn this amazing language, but it also gives a lot of opportunity. But if we never try, we will never know what we're capable. I'm sorry for my reading.
All right. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, if
Perfect.
you want to
That's
answer that, it's fine.
absolutely. I would say for the last one that Wendy said, it can be very challenging. It can be scary. We can feel nervous and uncomfortable. But again, the opportunities that it might afford us, that it might open up for us, I think are worth it, right? It's taking that leap. It's not being afraid to make mistakes, about not expecting to go from a beginner to an expert in a month or 6 months. It just takes time. It's a lot. I mean, to me, all learning is a lifelong process, right? We should be learning something hopefully new every day, and language would be one of the skills.
Chalito is the best example how to learn English lyric. No, Chalito?
Hmm.
Yeah, because I worked there, I was surrounded by a lot of people. I was telling Claudia that well, not just Claudia here, also my wife. I
Mm.
was telling both of them that on my life, all my entire life, all my discussions, I fought many of the time with people in English because I was at McDonald's. It's customer
Sure.
service people, so most of the time
Mm.
you need to be strong. You need to tell, oh no, please, this is not the right way. I discuss with a lot of people right now. I'm working on an insurance company, so I
Mm.
also talk with. I have these arguments with a lot of people.
Mm.
Like I don't know. On my regular day in Spanish, I never argue with anyone. Like one or two
Mm.
times in a month, and I'm saying
Mm.
like an example. Like I'm arguing in something like a specific topic, but not
Mm.
like an actual argument. So I was telling both of them that in my life, I have discussed and I have argued much more in English than in actual
Mm.
native. My native
Mm.
language, which so that's something that I was thinking about it. So that's the way, the frame of my thinking. Most of the times, I'm just
Sure.
yeah, because I discuss with the people and I say, no, ma'am, no, it's not this. This is
Mm-hmm.
not the best way, or this is we're not going to do this. So, but this is because I work in the customer service.
Yes, exactly. Dealing with
I'm
the
working
public.
in customer
Hmm.
service. Yeah, and
Hmm.
it's quite difficult. So Claude is saying, yeah, I learn because I need to learn. I need to speak,
Hmm.
and this is
Hmm.
my next question mark, because
Sure.
sometimes this is what happened. I was on the meeting with you, and back in the Gettysburg Library, and then I
Mm.
was listening other people, like maybe Farsi people or Chinese people, and they were talking
Mm.
with you, Mark, and it was amazing because most of the time I was listening to them at the same distance that you are, but I was unable to understand what they are saying. And the fact that you can understand and you can reply them, and I was like, oh, I have
Hmm.
no idea what they say, but you were able to listen and understand all of them. So Mar, how you make sure that that you understand so many accents, so
Mm,
many ways to
mm,
speak. How you do that? Because sometimes it happens to me that maybe I'm listening, someone is talking, I don't know, Somalian. I
mm,
was talking with one with that kind of accent, and for being honest with you, I have no idea what he was saying to me. I tried to
mm,
understand pieces of that, but I was not sure if I understand the whole picture, what he's trying to tell me. So
mm, mm,
I remember that you were able to do it. So how you
mm.
make sure, Mark, that you understand all the people that talk with you?
Yeah, this is a great question, Gonzalo, and people have asked me this over the years. I think one of the things I'll say is that I think it should give everyone hope because I think the main way that I've been able to do this to some degree, at least successfully, I hope, is again through repetition, through constant exposure. So for most people who are learning English, let's say they're learning it as a second language, and they want to either speak it because they for a job opportunity or they live in the United States or they're moving to a country where English is the first language for them. I would say that as much exposure as possible to listening to native speakers speak, right? So usually that's not going to be in person. It's going to be by watching movies, television shows, listening to podcasts, things like that is how they get exposed to hearing native speakers speak English. So for me, obviously that was my entire life, basically hearing that. So the exposure came with constant repetition, meetings year after year, meeting thousands. I've probably met over 10,000 people from other countries. We practice English together. So that constant exposure and repetition for me, for hearing many, many, many different accents, as you said, from all over the world, Gonzalo, I think that sharpened my skills. And that's why I think for Claudia, obviously it's worked for you and for all the people that we meet. I know it's frustrating. And at times you feel like, oh gosh, I don't understand what anyone's saying. But over time, I promise it really does.
Repeat.
I'll never say, yeah, no, you're not alone, Claudia. It's everyone. So I'm never going to say, people who've been in my meetings know I never say it will become easy. I do not say that, but I say it will become less challenging. And at times you'll actually feel comfortable and after a while enjoy it. But it does take time because we're listening to sounds that are not the sounds we've heard our entire lives, right? I know there's certain words, there's certain letters and certain sounds in Spanish that we do not have in English, and vice versa. There's certain letter sounds that we make in English that do not exist in Spanish. So it's we're like reprogramming our brain in a way, and then keeping the balance because it's not as if, oh, okay, all of a sudden after a few years I'm going to be speaking English, but we still have to have our native speaking skills too when we're talking with most of our friends, family, and all types of situations. So it's just over and over and over. The last analogy I'll make about this is it's appropriate because the Olympics are now, right? The Winter Olympics. And when we look at
Yeah.
these athletes, these are the best athletes in the world at their sport, like literally the top one millionth of 1%. Incredible at what they do. But how did they get that way? Obviously, a lot of it is natural born skill and talent, of course. But even with that, that's not enough. They have to practice and they're repeating hour after hour after hour, day after day after day. And these are the people who are the best at their individual events of anyone in the world. And still, for them, they can never practice enough. So we have to, practice a lot
Yes.
too. And it gets a little less challenging, a little less difficult, Claudia. I promise it does. Really.
But it's very important that people don't use all time the Google Translate because check the idea is difficult. It's difficult because uh, when I study English, you write no in the Google Translate. The idea very different, very different. Is the better the dictionary use, no? But the people not used to the dictionary, but it's necessary. What do you
Mhm.
most enjoy teaching?
I
You
I mean the yeah the
teaching.
thing.
Mhm.
Mhm. Sure. The thing, or one of the things that I enjoy most, Claudia, is just meeting people.
The teaching the other people, teaching the other language. What is your enjoy? Maybe for now, for example, know other people, the different cultures. What is your
Hmm.
enjoy?
I mean, I think you named one of the things that would be at the top of my list is meeting people from so many different countries, from so many different cultures over the year, and learning things about their countries and cultures that I would not have known. And also, I so for me, I grew up in New York City, right? And New York City is very different than the rest of the United States, right? It's a very unique, singular place. And then I moved about a little over 20 years ago when I got married to Susan, who Gonzalo knows well. And moving here in a much quieter, different, very diverse, but it's still
Mhm.
different. It's quiet. It's not a big city. And I think I relate to people. One reason why I enjoy doing this is because I relate to people who leave their native country, leave their native culture, take a big leap, who have come to the United States, and all of a sudden have to start their life over, uh, all over in a new language, English, which is not something that as adults they were used to doing. And I relate to that. To me, I feel like I came from another country, New York City, and here I am with everyone else experiencing these things which were very, very different from me. So I think, as you mentioned, as Gonzalo mentioned, that even with all the certain differences that we have, there's such a common thread that unites us, right? People are people, parents are parents, children are children, and we have brothers, sisters, grandparents, grandchildren. And we find this out, even though some of the specifics of what people have gone through are very, very different. But when we sit around a table, like we did with Gonzalo in the library, or when we are in a Zoom meeting, like we've been doing almost the past 2 years, we hear things and people, I see people smiling, or we hear people laughing, or we see people crying over challenging circumstances that people have been through, and we see how people are just so similar when it comes to what they want for their children, what they want for their family, and the experiences that they've gone through. And I think learning about this from so many different people, from so many different countries and cultures, is probably the thing that I enjoy most. And the food. And the one other thing is the food. Gonzalo can tell you, when we were meeting in person, we would have picnics, right? So people
Yeah,
would
Yeah.
make food from their native countries and we'd all get together. So the food also, I cannot
the
lie.
food.
The food, eating delicious food from all over the world has been a great experience too. Absolutely.
Mark, I think I told this story, but I'm not going to translate it because I can get in trouble
Oh,
if I
okay.
translate this. So I'm going to tell. Do you remember the time? Because Claudia, she was talking about from the fact that most of the time the Google Translator they change the idea what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was back on the at McDonald's, and then I was not sure how to say let's hang out. So I used a different phrase that I use make out. So I was with my I was with supervisor, which is a married woman for,
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, and then I
Sure.
told that, and she was like, "What you told me?" And then I do remember
Mm-hmm.
that. I do remember that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what caused because I was not sure, like the fact that I was translating on my mind the exact words
Mm-hmm.
that I use in Spanish, like to just hang out, but I just told a complete different thing. So yeah, I remember that, and maybe I told you back of the
Mm-hmm.
time. So of course we're not going to translate this because I can get in
Okay.
trouble, but
We don't want to get in
that's
trouble.
what happened.
But this is common, Gonzalo, because again, what we focus on in our meetings is conversational English, so people can understand when people are speaking English to them what the people are saying, and they could try to communicate effectively in English to native speakers or to other non-native speakers who also are sharing the English language together. These kinds of things, conversational English, informal English, slang, of course, idioms. It's very difficult. It takes a while because most people have not studied these in their native language. Even if they have studied English, they probably have not studied too much slang or conversational informal English. And one little difference in word, like let's hang out, let's make out, yes, very big difference in meaning to native speakers. But when it's not your native language, you might think, oh, this should be pretty close. But of course, to native speakers, there can be a huge difference. But how would anyone know that as a non-native speaker? There's no way to know. There is no way. It's just finding out, hopefully, in an experience that does not get us into trouble. Yeah, a safe environment.
Oh, Mark, on these 10,000 people you met, or the 10, no, 10,000 meetings you
Probably even
have,
more.
uh, yeah, even more than that. What's the you feel accomplished? What's when you think about it, that when you think about it of this and what you, all the people you met back in the past, what's the what you consider is the goal, or the accomplish you feel is the best for you? When Mark, you think about it in this, what's the best accomplished you get when you think about it on these 10 times the meetings you have with all these people? Sometimes we have meetings, remember, with 20 people at the same time talking
Mm-hmm.
a lot of topics. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you feel more proud of?
Yeah, it's a great question, Gonzalo. I think I could answer it in two parts. I think in the more general sense, but certainly very important, I think is creating a space for people from all over the world where they could come together, right? As we know, particularly here in the United States, we had a recent a president who really that did not seem to be his goal as president, to bring people together, right? It seemed to try to divide them apart, right? So for me, bringing people of very different cultures from very different countries, a wide variety of ages, because we would meet young students and we'd meet grandparents and everyone in between. So just providing a space where people could learn about each other in a safe, friendly environment and feel more united, particularly at a time, again, in recent years where that was a challenge, right? Where many forces in social media and politics and elsewhere, not just in the US, but we see around the world, are trying to divide people, right? To bring people together, to share their experiences and learn about, as you said, about countries and places they probably sometimes never heard of before, right? And then in our meetings are sitting next to someone from a country that they were not familiar with before. So that would be, I think, a really big thing for me. Just creating that environment where people came together. And then the other thing, maybe a little more goal or specifically oriented, would be that so many people that I've met over the years, they would come to our meetings and we would help them, and they had very specific goals, like some that had moved here and wanted to stay to become U.S. citizens. So we helped them to become citizens, pass their citizenship test, and that, and other people who maybe wanted to go on to university, right? We helped them start off in college and then get into university. Other people maybe who had specific exams, whether they were medical exams or to be pharmacists and nurses, and we helped them with their English skills so that they were able to take the test. And then they tell me 6 months, a year, 2 years later, Mark, I became a nurse, or Mark, I got into medical school, and things like that. I think it's wonderful that we were able to help them with their very specific goals that they had, and they were able to accomplish them. So I think both those things are very, very rewarding and really give us a sense of accomplishment.
Mark, and what's the next for you? Do you have plans maybe at the future? Maybe, well, you have a lot of these people that you met. Maybe you can write the memories about what you just accomplished.
Travel
All
to
these,
Mexico.
or maybe
Absolutely.
travel to
Tra-
Oh,
Mexico.
Claudia, just over a month ago, Susan and I, my wife and I, her brother lives in Imperial Beach, San Diego. So from where he lives, you just look south and you see the hills of Tijuana. and I was able to walk. I got to within 1 mile, sort of on the beach. There's an estuary, and the water comes out, and you cannot cross the water. But I was in within 1 mile of the border, and we were able to see all the buildings. So yes, absolutely. To travel to Mexico would certainly be high on our list of places to visit. And it's a really good question, Gonzalo, because what are challenges that we have not met yet, or that we haven't even maybe imagined or thought of that we can do next? That's something to brainstorm with all the people in our meetings, and with my wife, with Susan, of course, and see what a future chapter can be. But I think. I mean, to me, I think the calling that hopefully we all feel that we have is to serve and to help other people, however best we can do that. I think will be a continuation for us. Mhm.
Thank you, Mark. I think that's a good idea because, well, maybe I can tell to the pilgrims. That's the way we call the people from Tell Me a Book, pilgrims, because we believe that everyone is it's a pilgrim of new stories, for new books. So, Mark, this is like a question for us and for the audience, because I ask most of the people, hey, what give me an ideas to ask Mark. And there's one question that I like the
Sure.
most. So
Hmm.
this is the question I have from the people that I met. That met you, Mark. And this is how you met Susan. How was your story between?
Wow.
I know this is like something really
Hmm.
deep, really intimate question, but they asked me how
Hmm.
that I ask you how you met
Sh-
Susan. How was this?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it's really interesting because right now you and I and Claudia are communicating via the internet, of course, right? There's an app that we all are using, and we see each other and we hear each other, and it's getting broadcast on Facebook and all over, right? So Susan and I met through the internet, but this was a long time ago. So this was before, like, well, we were not even, forget about cameras and video and pictures. At that time, everything on the video was just text. You were just seeing words, nothing else, no graphical, interface. So it was, you could say it was random, you could say it was meant to be, fate, however we want to look at it. But I want to say it was New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1995. So Claudia probably was not even born yet. This is, so long ago, she was not even around. Okay. So December 31st, 1995, they had this thing on the internet called First Night. Right. So for people who did not want to go out, a lot of people, of course, go out on New Year's Eve before COVID. They went out, to a club to celebrate, to parties, things like that. Other people did not feel like it. I think I was a little under the weather, not feeling so well that night. Usually I did go out on New Year's Eve, but that night I did not. That year I did not. So again, maybe this is destiny. And I logged into the internet provider I had in New York City called Echo. It was one of the early communities. Again, you were not seeing pictures or videos. All it was were people with text, just chat, right? Things like that. And somehow people were logging into this site from all over the world. And somehow I logged in from New York. Susan logged in from here in suburban Maryland. And people were just like writing things. And it was scrolling by very fast. We saw people from Europe, people from Hawaii, people from all over the world and somehow Susan and I picked each other out just from what we wrote. We exchanged email addresses, and I guess you could say the rest is history. After that, eventually we met in person within a couple months, and then 5 years later we got married. So yeah, it was amazing. It was meant to be. I think we could say it was meant to be that we met that way. Because now I know they're apps, right? People have dating apps and meet this person. This did not exist. This was over 25 years ago. None of these things existed. So we just met through the internet, through the miracle of technology. That's how we met. Hmm.
Perfect.
Mark, and go
I,
ahead, Claudia.
my last question. What is your
Sure.
favorite book, Mark? Can you
Hmm.
recommend when the people start learn English?
Oh, that's a great question, Claudia. It's so hard to pick just one book, but one book I will because we talk about this in meetings and people ask about it. There's a wonderful book by American author, a woman that I think she wrote over 60 years ago. Her name is Harper Lee, and the name of the book is To Kill a
Oh,
Mockingbird, one of the most beloved
Deja ver.
American novels of the 20th century. Yeah, it's just beautiful, heartbreaking, and I think there's a lot going on in the book, but I think for people who are sort of beginning with English or intermediate or at a level like that, even they will be able to understand a lot of it, and it's just
In
so
the
beautiful.
in the in the another program, we can talk about this book in the radio.
Ab-
It's
Absolutely.
okay,
Sure, of course.
Gonzalo?
uh, yeah. Actually, we already talk about the
Oh,
Killing a Mockingbird because the past
Okay.
we talk about
perfect.
Harper Lee, so we know. But
Happily.
yeah, of course, we can talk. Mark, and this is just my last question for you and for all the
Sure.
audience that it's they join to us from many parts of the world. They want to
Mm.
hear you, they want to listen about
Hmm.
just this is now the way that we are going to connect all the continent from South
Mm.
Americans, I mean, like Mexico and also North
Sure.
Americans. So this is the way that we're doing this. Mark, what's the advice for all the native, I mean, Spanish speakers or well, all the speakers from all over the world to improve
Hmm.
their English skills? What's the the top three of these three skills so they can practice? I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe read book, talk with some other people. What's the best
Mhm.
three for you?
Sure. Oh, it's a great question, Gonzalo. And I think we've probably mentioned two or three of them. Again, however possible, surround yourself with as much English as often as possible. Again, listening to podcasts, watching, streaming Netflix or things like that. It's just so important to hear the language. Reading is very important, but to speak the language, we need to hear the language. So listen to as much English as you can, however you can, and hopefully at sometimes you actually get to speak English with someone. And if you do not, then speak to yourself. But just practicing these skills, hearing English, speaking it as much as possible. And the big one, I think, for everyone that I mentioned is just do not worry about making mistakes. It holds us back. If people say, "Okay, I'm going to wait," they're listening, which is really important. But then they'll say, "Oh, they think I'll speak when I can speak perfect English, or I'll speak when my English is better." That day is never going to come. Right? We just have to put ourselves out there. We make mistakes. So what? We're all human. We make mistakes, and then
Yeah.
it just flows. It flows better when we take that approach that I'm just going to do it, and I'm not worried what anyone else thinks or says. Right? You build your confidence that way over and over again, and people are amazed at where this can get them. They really are, because we meet people that when they first joined us at meetings, they never talked. They just did not talk, which is fine. We never force anyone, of course. But then after a while, they started to talk a little, and then maybe sometimes within a few months or a couple of years, we could not stop them from talking in English, right? They did, because they felt more confident. It's very difficult to do these things, particularly language, if we do not feel comfortable, and it's hard to feel comfortable speaking your non-native language, and if we do not feel confident, and how can we feel confident if we're not feeling comfortable, right? They kind of go together. So just shedding all our fears, just putting ourselves out there, I think that does it.
Got it. Mark, and how, for example, if the people that are watching us, the pilgrims,
Mhm.
they want to connect with you, how you have well, of course, we have the English the club on Facebook,
Sure.
but
On
also,
Facebook.
Mark, if
Absolutely.
someone else, if someone wants to talk with you or wants to meet with you or join to the classes, how it can connect with you, Mark, just to
I
people
think
that
c-
it's
c- mhm. eventually, I don't know. I'm not that good with technology. You two are, but if we could find a way to put the link, I guess, to our club, to our group on Facebook, and there we post it. We have the times of all the Zoom meetings and things like that. So I think that's probably the best way through our English group on Facebook. I think is the best way to connect that I know of. There might be other ways. I'm not sure. I'm not the most advanced. You two are much younger than I am, so you probably use the technology better than I do. But I think that's a start. Definitely a start. Absolutely.
We can to practice English with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We meet on Zoom. We meet 4 times a week, and we have people
Okay.
joining us. So we have people joining us that are maybe 12 hours ahead of us, say time wise, like people in Indonesia or places like Taiwan, and people are waking up at 5 in the morning to join our meetings. And other times we have people maybe that are 6, 7, 8 hours ahead of us, and they're staying up to 1 or 2 in the morning to practice English with us. So we meet people from everywhere, and everyone is always welcome to join us.
Perfect. We have more message in the Facebook.
Sure.
Carolina Balcázar Cárdenas say is
Uh,
from Colombia. Hi. Rebecca
Hola,
Hola,
Vieira
Carolina.
Carolina.
Lopez. Rebecca Vieira Lopez Ahumada from Brazil.
Uh,
Eh,
Boa noite, Rebecca. Yeah.
Nani Agus Nani. Hello everyone. Good morning from Indonesia.
Nani joins us. She
Indonesia.
stays up very late from Indonesia to join us. She's often up at 1 or 2 in the morning, right? All these hours to join us. Absolutely.
Gwendolyn Michelle, come to
Hmm.
Campeche,
Hmm.
Mark.
We will
Eh,
receive you.
Absolutely.
yes,
We want to go. Absolutely. We will, Wendy and Gonzalo. Absolutely.
perfect. Again, Nani Agus Nani, great answer and input, Mark Sagarin.
Thank you, Nani.
Gwendolyn Michelle, hi. And
And Wendy.
Rebecca Vieira Lopez Ahumada, thanks for the recommendation, Mark. I know it's a Pulitzer winner book, but I still
Hmm.
haven't read it. Now it's Net in the Line, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee.
Hmm.
Thanks again.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, we meet. We're so fortunate that in our meetings we meet so many smart, so many talented people from all over the world join us that we never would have met if it wasn't for practicing. People wanting to practice English. Absolutely.
Perfect. Gonzalo, finish the program today.
Well, thank you, Mark, for Joining us. It was always a pleasure to have you here.
Mhm.
Like, you
Thank
have a lot
you.
of people that are keeping. I mean, that they want to listen to you. So it was nice talk with you as always, Mark. I hope we can see each other. I'm not
Yes.
sure in the United States, maybe, or maybe Mexico, but definitely is not this year. It will be the next year that
Good
we will
and good
see.
news. Good news about that. I'm sorry, Gonzalo. Good news. Susan and I are renewing our passports. So once the passports get renewed, we can travel internationally again. So very exciting.
Yeah, of course.
Very, very
Uy.
We will
exciting for
receive
us.
if you come here. But if I go to Washington, to Maryland, Mark, I will visit with
You're
you. I
always
mean,
welcome to
to
stay
you,
with
to
us.
Susan, and then this time it will be my time to invite you to dinner. So the last time,
Thank you.
you were the one that invited me. So this next time, Mark, it will be my pleasure to invite you because that's
Thank you,
something I never
Gonzalo.
forget. So
Thank
thank you,
you.
Mark, for
Thank you.
you. And I
Thank you,
hope
Claudia.
many of the people here can join to us to your meetings, to your classes.
Sure.
So, Mark, this is the way that we dismiss this. Tell me a book for this time. This is the first of many that we're going to have to talk about books, to talk about just learning English for all the people that want to join to us. We're going to have another people. We're going to invite writers. We're going to invite people, journalists, a lot of people that I hope
Wonderful.
they can meet with us as the way you did. And thank you for us. And then let me
Thank
finish the
you.
program into Spanish so
Sure.
people are watching us, they can dismiss. Entonces, Clau,
Nice
con
to
esto
meet you.
cerramos.
Con esto cerramos. Nice
Con
to
esto,
meet you, Mark. See you
To
the
meet you,
next
Claudia.
thank
time.
you.
It was a
Absolutely.
pleasure. Is thank you for your patience. Thank you, thank
Oh,
you,
thank
thank you.
you. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you and Gonzalo for making this possible. Muchísimas gracias. Mhm.
Muchas
Thank you.
gracias. Pues así
And
terminamos
thank you for all.
el programa de hoy y espero que les haya gustado. Por favor, pongan sus impresiones. Estamos dando un nuevo paso a este Tell Me a Book que estamos hoy comenzando con un gran invitado de honor que tuvimos el día de hoy con Mark Sagarin y esperamos tener pues más sorpresas para todos ustedes, Gonzalo.
Pues ya nos vamos, Clau. Y pues bueno, no se Mark, please do not disconnect the call because we're going to have the picture, the memory picture. So let's say bye, everyone. So hasta luego, peregrinos. Cuídense. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye bye.